Why does no one look at the woman scraping concrete at dawn? The answer would change everything they thought they knew about strength. The shovel scraped, metal against stone. Again, again. The sound echoed through the kennel block at Fort Bragg like a heartbeat no one bothered to hear. Emma Sophia Holloway knelt on damp cement, her hands wrapped around a plastic bucket that had seen better years. Gray coveralls hung loose on her small frame. Mud stains, dog hair. Substances she'd stopped nomming long ago. A faded cap covered brown hair pulled back in a ponytail that looked like it had given up trying. She was small, maybe 5'4" on a good day, the kind of person built for disappearing, for blending into backgrounds, for being overlooked. And that's exactly what they did. The morning sun barely cleared the North Carolina pines. Long shadows stretched across rows of chain-link cages where some of the most dangerous combat dogs in the United States military waited, watched, remembered things humans tried to forget. The shovel kept moving, methodical, patient, like breathing. "Hey, poop girl." The voice cut clean. Staff Sergeant Tyler Garrett stood 20 feet away, arms crossed over a chest that seemed designed specifically for intimidation. Behind him, 5 soldiers in pristine Delta Force uniforms fanned out like wolves spotting prey. Their unit patches gleamed in early light, silent proclamations of elite status. "Kennel 7 needs cleaning now," Garrett said. "We need space for the new dog shipment." Emma didn't turn around. The shovel continued its work. Scrape, lift, dump, repeat. The same measured pace it had kept before his voice interrupted the morning. Garrett's jaw tightened. He wasn't accustomed to being ignored, particularly not by someone he considered several rungs below him on every ladder that mattered. At 32, he'd spent a decade building a reputation as one of Delta's most aggressive operators, a man who solved problems through force and intimidation in equal measure. The thought that a kennel worker would dare dismiss his presence, something his ego couldn't process. "You deaf?" He stepped closer, combat boots crunching on gravel, "or maybe you just don't understand English." Laughter rippled through the group behind him. Corporal Megan Lawson, the only female in the Delta contingent, let her gaze travel slowly over Emma's stained coveralls. Her expression carried that particular disdain of someone who'd clawed her way into an elite unit and now looked down on anyone who hadn't achieved the same. "Leave her alone, Garrett." The voice came from Sergeant Lucas Brennan, standing slightly apart from the group. His tone carried discomfort rather than conviction, the words of someone who knew something was wrong but lacked courage to fully commit to opposition. "Leave her alone." Garrett's laugh was sharp, humorless. "The only job women should have in this army is cleaning up waste and making coffee. Looks like she's already got one covered." Emma rose slowly from her crouch. For the first time since the confrontation began, she turned to face them. Her eyes swept across each face in sequence. Gray eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No anger flickered in that gaze. No fear trembled at its edges. There was only observation, cold, clinical, like a sniper assessing targets through a scope. In that fraction of a second, something shifted in Brennan's perception. The way she stood, weight distributed evenly, shoulders squared but relaxed, center of gravity lowered almost imperceptibly. It wasn't the posture of a kennel worker. It wasn't the posture of someone who spent their days shoveling waste and filling water bowls. But the moment passed. Emma simply nodded once before returning to her work. "That's what I thought," Garrett sneered. "Nothing but a glorified maid." The Delta operators moved on, their laughter trailing behind them like exhaust fumes. None of them noticed the slight adjustment Emma made to her grip on the shovel, the way her fingers found positions that would have been equally effective on a weapon. None of them saw the micro-expression that crossed her face as she cataloged each of their voices, their gaits, their weaknesses. None of them understood that they had just been evaluated by someone whose assessments carried consequences far beyond their imagination. The morning progressed with the mundane brutality of military routine. Emma finished her rounds, moving from cage to cage with an efficiency that spoke of intimate familiarity with both the space and its occupants. The dogs reacted to her presence with varying degrees of interest. Most acknowledged her with a sniff or a tail wag before returning to their rest. A few pressed against the chain link, seeking contact with the quiet woman who smelled of their territory. The exception was Kennel 17. Inside the reinforced enclosure, a massive Belgian Malinois named Titan watched Emma's approach with eyes that had seen things no domestic animal should ever witness. His coat was darker than breed standard, almost black in the shadows of his cage. A lattice of scars ran across his muzzle like a map of violence survived. 3 handlers had attempted to work with Titan since his arrival at Fort Bragg. All 3 had requested transfers within a week. Emma stopped in front of the kennel. Titan rose from his bed, not with aggression, but with attention, his entire body oriented toward the woman on the other side of the chain link. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Emma's hand came up, fingers forming a shape that appeared in no standard military working dog manual. Titan's head tilted, his body relaxed, and slowly, deliberately he sat down, eyes never leaving Emma's face. "Good boy," she murmured, so quietly the words barely carried past the mesh. She moved on before anyone could notice the exchange. But something had just happened, something the Delta team would not understand for 3 more days. What happens when the person everyone ignores holds the answer to a question no one's asking yet? The Delta team's training session began at 0900 hours in the main demonstration area, a sprawling complex of obstacle courses, bite workstations, and tactical simulation buildings. Sergeant First Class Brandon Cruz led the technical instruction, his expertise in military working dogs evident in every precise movement and command. Captain Nathan Pierce observed from the elevated viewing platform. His expression betrayed the skepticism that had defined his leadership style since taking command of the unit 3 months prior. At 41, Pierce had spent 2 decades questioning everything from intelligence reports to his own instincts. It had kept him alive through 6 deployments and earned him a reputation as the officer who could not be fooled. The kennel staff gathered at the edge of the training area, their presence required to handle equipment and manage the dogs between exercises. Emma stood among them, her coveralls marking her as the lowest member of the hierarchy, a living piece of background scenery that no one bothered to acknowledge. "All right, listen up." Cruz's voice carried authority. "You're here because command decided your unit needs canine integration capability. That means in the next 3 weeks, you're going to learn everything from basic handling to advanced tactical deployment." Specialist Ryan Dalton raised his hand, a wiry soldier with the restless energy of someone who enjoyed creating chaos more than resolving it. "Question, Sergeant. What's with the cleaning crew? Thought this was supposed to be a closed training session." Cruz's eyes flickered to the kennel staff, dismissing them with a glance. "Support personnel, ignore them." "Hard to ignore when they smell like what they clean," Garrett added, drawing scattered laughter. Emma's expression didn't change. She stood perfectly still, absorbing their words the way earth absorbs rain, quietly, completely, without reaction. But Brennan was watching her, and something in her stillness bothered him more than anger would have. The training began with basic commands: sit, stay, heel. The Delta operators approached the exercises with varying degrees of confidence. Most had worked with dogs in civilian life, pets that fetched balls and slept on couches. They assumed the transition to military working dogs would be simple. They were wrong. The Belgian Malinois they worked with that first day were patient, well-trained, forgiving of mistakes that would have drawn blood from less disciplined animals. But even these gentle corrections humbled the operators. Dogs ignored commands delivered without conviction, lunged at handlers who telegraphed fear. refused cooperation with those who approached them as tools rather than partners. By lunch, frustration permeated the group like humidity. "This is ridiculous," Lawson muttered, nursing a bruised ego after her assigned dog had simply walked away mid-exercise. "Why are we wasting time on this? We're soldiers, not dog trainers." "Because in the field, these animals can mean the difference between mission success and body bags," Cruz replied, his tone sharp enough to cut through their complaints. "They detect explosives you can't see, track enemies you can't smell, navigate terrain that would kill you before you took 10 steps, but they only do those things if you earn their trust, and trust isn't something you can order them to give." The afternoon session focused on detection work. Cruz demonstrated how military working dogs identified explosive materials through scent discrimination, how they alerted their handlers to threats invisible to human senses, how their training turned natural instincts into tactical advantages. The Delta operators watched, learned, began to understand that what they dismissed as simple was actually complex beyond their initial comprehension. And through it all, Emma cleaned, moved equipment, refilled water bowls, invisible labor that kept the training running smoothly while drawing no attention to itself. Until Titan's cage needed servicing. Cruz called for a handler, any handler, to demonstrate advanced obedience with the facility's most difficult animal. The kennel staff exchanged glances, silent communication that excluded the woman in stained coveralls. No one volunteered to work with Titan. His reputation preceded him like a warning siren. "I'll do it." Emma's voice was soft, almost apologetic, like someone asking permission to exist in a space that barely acknowledged her presence. Cruz looked at her for the first time that day, really looked. His expression cycled through surprise, doubt, and something that might have been concern. "You sure about that?" "Yes, Sergeant." "Your funeral," Garrett's voice carried from the observation area. More laughter followed, the kind that turns discomfort into entertainment at someone else's expense. Emma walked to Kennel 17, the same measured pace she'd used all morning. Nothing in her movement suggested nervousness or hesitation. She simply moved, one foot in front of the other, breathing steady, heart rate unchanged. Titan stood when she approached, 110 pounds of controlled aggression, scars and memories, eyes that had seen things that changed animals fundamentally. Emma opened the cage. The training area went silent. Even the other dogs seemed to sense something significant was happening. Cruz's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon. Pierce leaned forward on the observation platform. Brennan took an unconscious step closer. Emma entered the cage, closed the door behind her, and stood perfectly still. Titan circled her, once, twice, his nose working, processing information through scent that humans couldn't begin to interpret. He stopped in front of her, close enough that his breath moved the fabric of her coveralls. Emma's hand rose slowly, not reaching, not demanding, simply offering. Titan's head pushed into her palm. And then something happened that would haunt the Delta operator's memories for years to come. Emma's other hand moved through a series of gestures, silent commands that belonged to no manual any of them had ever read. Titan responded to each one, instantly, precisely, his movements flowing like choreographed dance. Down, up, heel, range, defend, stand down. The commands came faster, more complex. Titan never hesitated, never broke focus. His attention locked on Emma with the intensity of an animal that had found something it thought it had lost forever. "Trust." Cruz's voice broke the silence, quiet, almost reverent. "What in God's name?" Emma led Titan from the cage. The massive dog stayed perfectly at her left side, matching her pace, adjusting to her turns. When she stopped, he sat without command. When she moved, he followed like a shadow that had learned to anticipate light. She brought him to the center of the training area, the place where all eyes could see, All doubts could be shattered. "Watch," she said. And then she ran. Titan exploded after her, not chasing, escorting, his body positioned to intercept threats from angles Emma couldn't cover. They moved through the obstacle course like water finding paths of least resistance, over walls, under barriers, through spaces that required absolute trust between handler and animal. When Emma stopped, Titan stopped. When she whistled a sharp note, he ranged ahead and returned with a training dummy he'd been taught to identify as high-value target. When she gave a signal the Delta operators couldn't even see, he went still as stone, waiting, ready, absolutely certain of his purpose. The demonstration lasted 3 minutes. It felt like hours. When Emma finally called Titan back to heel and led him to his cage, the silence that followed carried weight. The kind that settles on people when their understanding of the world has just been fundamentally challenged. Pierce descended from the observation platform, his footsteps the only sound in the training area. He stopped in front of Emma, studied her face with the intensity of someone trying to solve a puzzle that had just revealed unexpected pieces. "Who are you?" he asked. Emma met his gaze, those gray eyes that absorbed light, that catalogued weakness, that had seen things these operators couldn't imagine. "Emma Holloway, sir, kennel maintenance." "That's not what I'm asking." For a long moment she didn't respond. The tension stretched, tightened, became something physical that pressed against everyone present. Then Cruz spoke, his voice strange, hollow, like a man speaking from the bottom of a well. "Master Sergeant, 3rd Special Forces Group, handler designation Ghost 1. The words landed like artillery shells, detonating understanding, scattering the comfortable assumptions that had made mockery easy and respect unnecessary. "You're dead," Pierce said, not accusation. Statement of fact based on classified briefings he'd received months ago. "The Ghost Pack program, Crimson Dawn. You're listed as killed in action 3 years ago." "I was," Emma replied. "The woman who went into that valley died there. What came back is just this." Her hand gestured vaguely at her coveralls, her bucket, her shovel, the humble disguise that had hidden a ghost. But Garrett couldn't leave it alone, couldn't accept that the woman he'd mocked held rank above his own, had capabilities that made his elite training look like basic drills. "This is some kind of joke," he said. "Some test command set up to mess with us." Emma turned to face him, and for the first time since the confrontation began, something other than observation flickered in her eyes. "Pity." "You want proof?" she asked quietly. She pulled up her left sleeve, revealed a shoulder marked with black ink, a tattoo of 6 dogs running in formation, names written beneath in script that trembled slightly. Rex, Nova, Titan, Wraith, Shadow, Echo, and below them all 2 words in letters that looked like they'd been carved rather than written. "Never forgotten." "These were my team," Emma said. "My family. The best handlers and dogs the United States military ever produced. We went into the Korangal Valley on a mission that was supposed to take 3 days. Only one of us came back." The training area held its breath. "So yes, Sergeant Garrett, I clean kennels, I shovel waste, I disappear into backgrounds. Because after you've lost everything that mattered, the small things become enough. The quiet becomes necessary. And the judgment of people who have never stood where I stood," she paused, "let the silence grow heavy. That becomes utterly irrelevant." Garrett's face had gone pale, the color of someone who just realized they'd been standing at the edge of a cliff without knowing it. Emma pulled her sleeve down, returned to her bucket, her shovel, her invisible labor that kept the world running while drawing no attention to itself. But nothing would be invisible anymore. The ghost had been seen, and once seen she could not be unseen. How do you apologize to someone whose pain you mocked before understanding its depth? The evening brought rain, soft at first, then harder. The kind that turned Fort Bragg's red clay into soup and made every outdoor space feel like contested territory. The Delta team gathered in the briefing room, their usual confidence replaced by something quieter, more uncertain. Pierce stood at the front, his expression carrying the weight of decisions that needed to be made. Behind him, a projection screen displayed information that had been classified until 2 hours ago. Mission reports, after-action analyses, casualty lists that told stories most operators would never have to read. Ghost Pack, Pierce began, was initiated 7 years ago as an experimental program combining Tier 1 operators with military working dogs trained beyond standard parameters. The goal was to create teams capable of operating in environments where conventional forces failed. High altitude, extreme weather, deep insertion scenarios where human limitations became fatal. He clicked to the next slide. 6 photographs appeared, handlers and their dogs, each pair radiating the confidence of people who'd found their purpose and excelled beyond measure. Master Sergeant Emma Sophia Holloway, call sign Ghost 1, 28 years old when this photo was taken, 12 combat deployments, expert marksman, advanced trauma specialist, and according to every evaluation ever conducted, the single best military working dog handler in the operational history of the United States Armed Forces. Emma's photograph showed a different person, younger, eyes bright with purpose rather than shadowed by loss. She stood with Wraith, a black Belgian Malinois whose intelligent gaze suggested awareness beyond animal instinct. Both of them looked ready, eager, unbroken by what lay ahead. 3 years ago, Pierce continued, Ghost Pack received tasking for Operation Crimson Dawn. Intelligence suggested a high-value target was meeting with local warlords in the Korangal Valley. The mission was supposed to take 72 hours. Insertion, reconnaissance, extraction. The next slide showed terrain. Mountains that looked like they'd been designed specifically to kill people. Valleys so deep that sunlight reached them only at noon. Passes where a single mistake meant falling until gravity finished what altitude had started. The intelligence was wrong. The target was there. So was an entire battalion of enemy fighters who'd been waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity. Ghost Pack walked into an ambush designed by someone who understood how elite teams operated. Brennan shifted in his seat. The others remained motionless, listening to a story that explained the woman they'd mocked, the pain they'd dismissed. The team fought for 6 days, Pierce said. Not the 3 they'd planned. 6 days of continuous contact, running gunfights through terrain that should have been impossible to navigate. The dogs performed beyond every specification, detected ambushes, warned of IEDs, carried ammunition and medical supplies when their handlers couldn't. He paused, let the weight settle. One by one the handlers fell. Sergeant First Class Marcus DeVuru, Staff Sergeant Lisa Kowalski, Technical Sergeant James Hartford, Sergeant Amy Chen, and finally Master Sergeant Holloway's own handler partner Captain Michael Chen, Amy's brother. The screen changed again. Now it showed a single photograph, grainy, taken from a rescue helicopter, a woman covered in blood that wasn't all hers, cradling the body of a dog that had died protecting her, her face a mask of grief so profound it hurt to look at. Master Sergeant Holloway carried her team's bodies 6 miles through enemy territory, Pierce said quietly. All 5 handlers, all 6 dogs. She refused to leave anyone behind. By the time the rescue team reached her, she'd been awake for 9 days straight, had sustained 3 gunshot wounds, multiple fractures, severe dehydration, and she was still moving, still trying to get her family home. Lawson's hand had risen to her mouth. Dalton stared at the floor. Even Garrett looked shaken, confronted by consequences he hadn't considered when mockery came easy. She was medically retired, Pierce continued. Full disability, Medal of Honor recommendation that she refused to accept. She told command that heroes don't come home alone, that medals don't bring back the people who mattered. She disappeared for 18 months. When she resurfaced, she requested the lowest assignment available at Fort Bragg, kennel maintenance. No rank displayed, no recognition required. He turned off the projection, faced his team with expression that demanded accountability. The woman you mocked this morning has forgotten more about tactical operations than most of us will ever learn. The woman you dismissed as beneath notice has capabilities that make our training look like kindergarten. And the woman you judged based on her coveralls carries grief that would break anyone in this room. Silence held the space, heavy, thick, uncomfortable in ways that demanded response. "What do we do now?" Brennan asked, his voice small, young, like someone who just realized the world contained depths he'd never considered. "You learn," Pierce replied, "from her if she's willing to teach, which, given how you've treated her, is not guaranteed." Garrett stood, his usual swagger absent, replaced by something that looked like genuine shame. "I need to apologize." "Apologies are easy," Pierce said. "Change is hard. The question isn't whether you'll say sorry, it's whether you'll become someone worthy of being forgiven." The briefing ended. The team dispersed, each of them carrying new weight, the kind that comes from understanding you've wounded someone who deserved protection rather than persecution. Emma found Brennan outside Kennel 17 an hour later. Rain fell steady, soaking. He stood watching tighten through the chain link. The big dog watched him back, neither moving, both evaluating. "He knows," Brennan said when Emma approached. "Somehow, he knows I'm trying to understand." "Dogs read intention better than humans," Emma replied. "They don't care about words. They care about what lives beneath them." "I should have stopped Garrett. This morning. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't have the courage to stand up." "Courage isn't absence of fear," Emma said. "It's action despite fear. You wanted to speak. That's more than most manage." Brennan turned to face her. Rain ran down his face like tears he hadn't earned the right to shed. "What they did to you, in that valley, and then he couldn't finish. The weight too heavy for words." "They didn't know," Emma said simply. "How could they? I chose to hide, to disappear. That choice has consequences." "But why? Why would someone with your capabilities choose to clean kennels?" The question hung between them. Emma looked past him, through the rain, toward something only she could see. "Because," she said quietly, "after Crimson Dawn I couldn't trust myself with power anymore. I'd lost my team, my family, everything that made the mission meaningful, so I took the smallest job available, the one where I couldn't hurt anyone else, where I could serve without leading, where I could exist without the weight of other people's lives in my hands." "That's not weakness," Brennan said. "That's the strongest thing I've ever heard." Emma's smile was sad, gentle, the expression of someone who'd learned truths that couldn't be taught. "You're young. You'll understand eventually. Strength isn't about what you can do. It's about choosing not to do it when the cost becomes too high." She moved to leave, to return to her quiet life among the dogs who asked nothing but presence. But Brennan's voice stopped her. "Will you teach us?" he asked. "Not because command says you should, but because we need to learn what you know, how to honor what you've lost by becoming better than we are." Emma studied his face, saw genuine desire there, the first stirring of transformation that might become wisdom given time. "Ask me again tomorrow," she said, "after you've sat with what you learned today, after you've really understood what it means to carry the weight of people who trusted you and died anyway. If you still want to learn, then we'll talk." She walked away, disappeared into rain and shadow, leaving Brennan alone with Titan and thoughts that would keep him awake through the night. But something had shifted, something fundamental. The ghost had been revealed, and now the question became whether these operators could rise to meet the standard she represented. Whether they could transform mockery into respect, judgment into understanding, and themselves into people worthy of the lessons she might teach. Tomorrow would tell. Tomorrow always did. What happens when the person you dismissed becomes the only one who can save you? The emergency briefing came at 0300 hours. Lights slammed on in the Delta barracks with the urgency of crisis. Pierce's voice cut through sleep-heavy confusion. "Get dressed. Full combat load. Briefing room in 5 minutes. This is not a drill." The team assembled with the practice speed of operators who'd trained for sudden deployment. But confusion marked their faces. Training schedules didn't include 3 a.m. crisis response. Something had gone wrong. Badly wrong. Pierce stood at the front of the briefing room. Behind him, intelligence photos showed terrain that made the Korangal Valley look gentle. Mountains. Desert. The particular brown landscape of Afghanistan where good people went to die for causes that might never matter. "Master Sergeant Amy Chen," Pierce began, his voice tight with controlled urgency. "Captured 72 hours ago during a reconnaissance operation in Nangarhar province. Held with 11 other personnel in a compound we've been tracking for 6 months. Intel suggests execution within the next 12 hours. Chen, the name hit different now. Michael Chen's sister. The handler who'd survived Ghost Pack only because Emma had carried her bleeding body 6 miles through enemy fire. Now captured again. Now facing death again. "The rescue operation is already in motion," Pierce continued. "Standard Delta protocols. Hello insertion. Fast extraction. Minimal footprint. Estimated success probability is 63%. 63%. In the world of special operations, that meant 37% chance that everyone involved would die trying. Acceptable losses. Calculated risk. The cold mathematics of war." "There's a problem," Pierce said. "The compound is surrounded by terrain that's been seeded with anti-personnel explosives, not standard patterns. Custom placement designed by someone who understands how rescue teams operate. Our usual detection methods are compromised. We need capabilities beyond what conventional teams can provide." He didn't need to say more. Every operator in the room understood. They needed Ghost Pack capabilities. They needed the one person who'd survived the impossible and learned lessons written in blood. They needed Emma. "She's been briefed," Pierce said. "She declined." Garrett shot to his feet. "What? How can she refuse? This is Amy Chen, her own teammate." "Because," a quiet voice said from the doorway, "I'm not Ghost Pack anymore. I'm kennel maintenance. Remember." Emma stood in the entrance, still wearing her coveralls, still looking like someone who belonged in backgrounds, but her eyes, those gray eyes, they held something now that hadn't been there during training. A decision made. A line crossed. "I told Command I don't lead missions anymore," she continued. "I don't carry responsibility for other people's lives. That part of me died in Crimson Dawn." "Then Amy dies too," Brennan said, his voice raw with desperation. "Is that what you want? To let her go because you're afraid?" The word landed like a slap. Emma's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those gray eyes, something dangerous. "Afraid," she repeated, soft, almost gentle. "You think this is about fear." She stepped into the room, moved to the projection screen, studied the intelligence photos with the intensity of someone reading prophecy written in terrain. "I'm not afraid of dying," she said. "I'm afraid of surviving again, of coming back alone, again, of carrying bodies that trusted me, again, of living with the weight of choices that saved some people by sacrificing others, again." Her finger traced a path on the projected map. "But you're right about one thing. Amy doesn't deserve to die because I'm broken. None of them do." She turned to Pierce. "What assets do we have?" "Full Delta team, air support, standard K9 unit for detection." "Not enough. The standard dogs will miss half the explosives. Whoever designed this defense understands how we think. We need someone who thinks differently." "Like who?" Pierce asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Emma's gaze shifted to the window, through darkness toward the kennel block where shadows waited. "We need Titan. The dog that 3 handlers couldn't manage. Lawson's skepticism was obvious. The one who's been classified as too aggressive for field deployment. That dog, Emma said, was trained by the same program that created Ghost Pack. He's not aggressive. He's traumatized. There's a difference. Someone taught him to fight when he should have been taught to trust, but the capabilities are still there, buried under fear and pain. Give me 6 hours with him and I'll give you the detection specialist you need. Pierce studied her face, looking for cracks, for hesitation, finding only resolve hardened by grief into something unbreakable. "You'll lead the mission?" he asked. "No," Emma replied. "I'll support it, guide it, but I don't give orders anymore. You want this team ready, you assign another mission lead. I'm just the specialist you need for a specific problem." "That's not how this works. Your expertise is available as consultation, not command. Those are my terms. Accept them or I walk back to my kennels and you try this rescue with 63% odds." The silence stretched. Pierce calculated, weighed risk against certainty, pride against pragmatism. "Brennan," he said finally, "your mission lead." Brennan's eyes widened. "Sir, I don't have the experience." "You have something better. You asked to learn from her. Here's your chance. Emma provides tactical guidance on detection and movement. You make the final calls. Can you handle that?" Brennan looked at Emma, found those gray eyes watching him, evaluating, not with judgment, with something that might have been hope. "Yes, sir," he said. "Good." Pierce turned back to the map. "Insertion in 16 hours. Emma, you've got until then to work miracles with Titan. Everyone else, gear check and mission prep. We're bringing Amy Chen home, all of her team. No one gets left behind." The briefing dissolved, operators moving with purpose toward a mission that might kill them all. Emma started toward the door, toward 6 hours that would determine whether the ghosts of Crimson Dawn could find peace through one more mission. Garrett caught her arm. She stopped, looked at his hand, then at his face, waiting. "I'm sorry," he said, the words simple, insufficient, true. "Sorry doesn't save Amy," Emma replied. "But being better might. You want to apologize, survive this mission, bring everyone home, then we'll talk about sorry." She pulled free, left him standing with words that had come too late to prevent wounds but might arrive in time to start healing them. Outside, rain had stopped. Stars emerged through breaking clouds. Emma walked toward Kennel 17 where Titan waited, where 6 hours would determine if broken things could be made whole enough to save lives that hung in balance. Behind her, the Delta team prepared for war. Ahead of her, a traumatized dog waited for someone who understood that the deepest wounds lived in places bullets never reached. And somewhere in Afghanistan, Amy Chen counted hours until execution or rescue, unaware that the woman who'd saved her once was about to risk everything to do it again. Because that's what family meant, even family you thought you'd lost. Even family that existed only in memory and obligation. Even family that required you to become the person you'd sworn never to be again. The kennel door opened. Titan raised his head, recognized the shadow that understood shadows, and in that moment something old stirred, something that remembered what it meant to trust. 6 hours. It would have to be enough. Can someone who's lost everything find the strength to risk it all again? Emma entered Kennel 17 as dawn threatened the eastern horizon. Titan stood waiting, not aggressive, expectant, like an animal that had been holding breath for 3 years and finally found permission to exhale. She closed the door behind her. The outside world ceased to exist. There was only this space, this dog, this moment where past and present collided. "I need you," she said quietly. "Amy needs you. I know what they did. I know why you don't trust anymore, but I'm asking anyway. One more mission. One more chance to be what you were trained to be." Titan's head tilted, processing words through context and tone. Dogs didn't understand language the way humans did, but they understood intention, need. the desperate hope of someone asking for help they had no right to expect. Emma sat on the concrete floor, made herself small, non-threatening. She'd learned this years ago, that sometimes strength meant making yourself vulnerable, that trust flowed toward those willing to risk rather than those demanding compliance. "They broke you," she said. "Whoever had you before Fort Bragg. They taught you that humans hurt, that partnership meant pain, that the best defense was aggression because nothing else kept you safe." Titan moved closer, cautious, each step a question asked and answered. "But that's not who you are," Emma continued. "Not at your core. You were Ghost Pack, trained by people who understood that these missions require more than obedience. They require belief in your handler, in yourself, in the idea that some things matter enough to risk everything." She extended her hand, palm up, offering without demanding. Titan sniffed, his breath warm against her skin. For a long moment nothing happened. Then slowly, carefully, he lowered his head into her palm. "Contact. Trust." The first step toward remembering who he'd been before pain taught him to forget. Emma's other hand moved through the old signals, the ones that belonged to Ghost Pack protocols, the gestures that said, "I know you. I understand you. I will not abandon you the way others have." Titan responded, hesitant at first, then with growing confidence. His body remembered what his mind had tried to bury, the movements, the patterns, the dance between handler and dog that transcended words. They worked through the night, Emma rebuilding bridges that trauma had burned, Titan rediscovering capabilities he'd thought lost forever. The detection work came back first, his nose still perfect, still able to distinguish explosive compounds from background scent with accuracy that made technology look primitive. Then came the movement patterns, how to range ahead and return, how to signal threats without alerting enemies, how to navigate terrain that would kill humans while finding paths that might save them. Hour by hour, the dog that Fort Bragg had labeled too dangerous for deployment became something else. Not the Titan who'd arrived traumatized and aggressive, but not the Titan of Ghost Pack either. Something new, forged from pain into purpose. As sunrise painted the kennel block in shades of gold and crimson, Emma led Titan from his cage. The Delta team had assembled in the training area. Full combat gear, weapons checked, faces marked by the particular tension of people preparing to risk everything. Brennan stepped forward, looked at the massive Belgian Malinois with newfound respect. "Is he ready?" "Ready as he'll ever be," Emma replied. "But understand something. He's not a tool you deploy. He's a partner you trust. Respect that and he'll save your life. Treat him like equipment and he'll remember why he stopped trusting humans." "Understood." Brennan knelt, brought himself to eye level with Titan. "Hey, buddy, we're going to bring Amy home. You remember Amy, don't you? She needs us, all of us." Titan's tail moved, barely but enough. The helicopter flight to Afghanistan took 8 hours. Emma sat in the cargo hold, one hand resting on Titan's neck. The dog remained calm, focused. Whatever anxiety he felt stayed buried beneath training that ran deeper than fear. The rest of the team prepared in their own ways. Garrett checked and rechecked his gear. Lawson studied mission maps until she could navigate them blind. Dalton maintained weapons with the obsessive focus of someone who needed tasks to quiet thinking. Brennan sat across from Emma, his expression cycling through doubt and determination in equal measure. "What if I make the wrong call?" he asked quietly. "What if someone dies because I'm not experienced enough?" "Someone might die anyway," Emma replied. "That's war. You can't control outcomes, only choices. Make the best calls you can with the information available. Trust your team, trust Titan. And when doubt comes, remember why we're doing this. To bring Amy home." "To bring everyone home," Emma corrected. "Amy and the 11 others with her. Every single one matters. Every single one deserves our best effort." The helicopter descended toward staging area just across the Afghan border. Night had fallen again, the particular darkness of mountains where light went to die. They had 4 hours until insertion, 4 hours to finalize plans that might save lives or end them. Pierce met them at the forward operating base, his face grave. Intel update. Enemy forces around the compound have tripled. Someone knows we're coming. This is going to be harder than projected. How much harder? Brennan asked. 63% success probability is now 38%. Command is considering abort. No, Emma's voice cut through the discussion like steel through silk. Amy has 6 hours until execution, maybe less. We abort, she dies, they all die. Those aren't acceptable losses. The math says. The math doesn't account for what Titan can do. What this team can do when they stop thinking like individuals and start operating like family. Pierce studied her face, saw something there that made him pause. You've changed your mind about leading. No, Emma said. Brennan leads, but I'm not just consultation anymore, I'm in. Full commitment, because family doesn't abandon family, not ever again. The insertion began at 0200 hours. 2 helicopters, 12 operators, 1 military working dog, flying low through mountain passes that existed as black voids against darker sky. Enemy radar couldn't track them at this altitude, but physics didn't care about stealth. One wrong turn meant mountains painted with American blood. They landed 3 kilometers from the target compound. The helicopters departed immediately, leaving the team in silence so complete it had weight. No ambient light, no sound except wind moving through rocks that predated human civilization. Emma moved to point position with Titan. The dog ranged ahead, his dark coat invisible against night, his movements precise, controlled. Every few meters he stopped, tested air, signaled clear or wait based on sent information humans couldn't access. The team followed, single file, weapons ready but not raised, trust in the dog that was leading them through minefield that conventional detection would have missed. Titan stopped, sat, the signal for explosive detected. Emma raised her fist. The team froze. She moved forward carefully, found the pressure plate buried under sand exactly where Titan had indicated, marked it with infrared chemical visible only through night vision, moved around it, continued forward. Twice more, Titan detected explosives placed in patterns designed to kill rescue teams. Twice more, Emma marked and circumvented. The route that should have taken 30 minutes stretched to 90, but every operator reached the compound perimeter alive. That's when the real mission began. Guards patrolled the compound with the bored efficiency of people who didn't expect challenge. Why would they? The approach was mined. The terrain, impossible. No rescue team could reach this location undetected. They hadn't accounted for ghost pack protocols, for a dog trained beyond standard parameters, for a handler whose experience had been written in loss and refined through grief. Emma positioned herself with Titan in overwatch. Her weapon covering approaches the team would take. Brennan led the assault element, moving through shadows with newly learned patience. His commands whispered rather than shouted, his movements deliberate rather than rushed. Titan ranged ahead through the compound. Guards who might have detected human movement ignored the shadow passing behind them, their training inadequate for threats that didn't match expected patterns. The door to the holding building stood ahead. 2 guards flanked it, bored, certain of their safety. Titan struck first, silent, devastating, training that prioritized efficiency over drama. 1 guard fell before understanding what happened. The second had time to draw breath for a shout that never came as Emma's hand closed over his mouth. The door opened. Inside, prisoners lay in various states of injury and exhaustion. Amy Chen looked up as light from outside illuminated the figure in the doorway. Her face cycled through disbelief and recognition that transcended years. "It's you," she whispered. It's me. Emma moved into the room, her hands already working to free restraints. Can you move? Some of us, the others. Chen's voice trailed off, implications clear. Then we carry them. Emma keyed her radio. Phantom to Overwatch, package located, 12 souls, mixed mobility, request immediate extraction. The response came through static. Overwatch copies, extraction inbound, hold position. The next minute stretched into eternity. Emma positioned herself at the door, weapon ready. Titan patrolled the perimeter with tireless vigilance. The captured soldiers who could move helped those who couldn't, training asserting itself despite ordeal endured. When the helicopters arrived, rotors drowning night in sound, the compound erupted into chaos. Guards who'd been watching wrong approaches suddenly found themselves surrounded by forces they hadn't anticipated. The extraction was messy but successful. Soldiers moved through predetermined patterns, securing prisoners, eliminating threats with professional efficiency. Emma covered the withdrawal, her position holding the corridor that led to the landing zone. The last soldier was aboard when she finally allowed herself to breathe. Chen's voice cut through the helicopter's noise. Thank you, again. Don't thank me yet. Emma's attention had shifted to something outside the aircraft, her eyes fixed on movement that shouldn't have been there. A dog, black coat moving through the compound's chaos with purpose that suggested intelligence beyond animal instinct. And on its left ear, barely visible in flickering light of fires consuming buildings, a scar shaped like lightning bolt. Wraith, Emma breathed. The helicopter lifted before she could act, carrying her away from the ghost she'd thought buried in foreign soil. Below, the compound collapsed into flames, taking with it whatever answers might have existed. But the image remained, burned into memory like the tattoo on her shoulder. Wraith was alive, somehow, impossibly. The alpha female of Ghost Pack had survived Crimson Dawn and spent 3 years in captivity, waiting for rescue that had finally arrived. And now she was gone again, disappeared into the Afghan night, a mystery that would haunt Emma's dreams for years to come. What does redemption look like when you've lost everything and somehow found it again? The return to Fort Bragg brought closure of a different kind. The Delta team had been rescued, Chen among them. The mission classified successful, details buried in files that would never see public light. But for those who'd witnessed Emma's revelation and understood its implications, something fundamental had changed. They gathered in the briefing room 3 days after the extraction, the same space where Pierce had revealed Emma's history, now transformed into something else, a place where judgment gave way to respect, where mockery dissolved into understanding. Emma stood at the front, still in her coveralls, still looking like someone who belonged in backgrounds, but no one saw her that way anymore. The disguise had been stripped away, the ghost revealed, and what remained was someone they'd underestimated to their eternal shame. The Ghost Pack program, Pierce announced, is being officially reactivated, effective immediately. Master Sergeant Holloway has agreed to lead the training protocols, not as active operator, but as the architect of capabilities we've proven we desperately need. Applause filled the room, genuine, born from respect earned through blood and validated through results. But Emma raised her hand. Silence fell. I have conditions, she said quietly. This program doesn't exist to create weapons. It exists to forge partnerships between handlers and dogs, between humans and animals that deserve better than we've given them. Anyone who joins does so knowing that these dogs are not tools, they're family. And family means you protect them, honor them, never abandon them. Her eyes swept across the faces, lingering on each operator who'd mocked her, dismissed her, learned from their mistakes. Brennan, she continued, you'll be first handler. Titan is yours now if you'll have him. Brennan stood, moved to where Titan waited at Emma's side. The big dog watched him with eyes that had learned to trust again. Slowly, carefully, Brennan knelt, brought himself to eye level. "I'd be honored," he said. Titan's tail moved. Then his head pushed into Brennan's hand. Contact, trust, the beginning of partnership that might become something more. "Garrett," Emma said, "you requested transfer to the program." Garrett rose, his usual swagger absent, replaced by something humbler, more genuine. "Yes, Master Sergeant, I know I don't deserve the chance, not after how I treated you, but I'm asking anyway, because I need to become better than I am, and I think this program might teach me how." Emma studied him, weighing sincerity against history, finding possibility in the gap between who he'd been and who he might become. "Approved, but understand something. The first time you disrespect your dog, the first time you treat them as less than partner, you're done. No second chances. These animals deserve better than we've given them. I won't tolerate anyone who can't understand that." "Understood," Garrett said, meaning it. The others found their own paths. Cruz became lead instructor for technical aspects. Dalton discovered unexpected patience working with younger dogs. Even Lawson found aptitude for the relationship building that Ghost Pack required. But for Emma, the mission in Afghanistan had reminded her of truths she tried to forget. The weight of Crimson Dawn would never fully lift, but carrying it no longer required isolation. The family her father had described, the bond between handler and dog that transcended orders and protocols, still existed, still mattered. She received one final message before deploying on her next classified operation. A photograph taken by surveillance drone over the mountains of Afghanistan. In the image, barely visible against rocky terrain, a black dog stood watching the sky, waiting. The search for Wraith would continue. The Ghost Pack legacy would endure. And somewhere in the shadows where the most important work was done, Master Sergeant Emma Sophia Holloway would keep her promise. She would not leave them behind, not ever again. 3 weeks later, Emma stood in the training area watching Brennan work with Titan. The partnership had grown, deepened. What had begun as assignment had transformed into something genuine, bond forged through trust rather than command. Garrett approached from the kennel block. A young Belgian Malinois named Nova walked at his side. The dog who'd been labeled difficult, aggressive, too much for standard handlers, but Garrett had spent hours learning patience, earning trust, becoming the person the dog needed rather than demanding the dog become what he wanted. "She signaled for me today," Garrett said, pride and wonder mixing in his voice. "Actually sat and waited for my command instead of just doing what she wanted." "That's progress," Emma replied. "I wanted to apologize again, properly this time, for who I was, what I said, the judgment I had no right to make." Emma turned to face him, those gray eyes that had cataloged weakness now seeing strength where mockery had lived. "You already apologized with action, by becoming better, by honoring what these dogs deserve. That matters more than words ever could." "Still," Garrett said, "I need to say it. I'm sorry, for not seeing you, for not respecting you, for making assumptions that hurt someone who'd already survived more pain than I can imagine." "Apology accepted," Emma said simply. "Now stop apologizing and start teaching. Nova needs a handler who believes in her. Be that person." Garrett nodded, returned to his dog, to the work that would transform them both. Pierce joined Emma on the observation platform, watched the training area fill with handlers and dogs learning to trust each other. "You could have had command," he said, "full operational authority. Why did you choose support role instead?" "Because," Emma replied, "leadership isn't about authority. It's about enabling others to become their best. I lost my team because I thought I had to carry everything alone. I won't make that mistake again. These handlers, they don't need me to lead. They need me to guide, to teach, to remind them that the strongest partnerships are built on mutual respect rather than dominance. That's wisdom born from hard experience. That's the only kind that sticks." They stood in comfortable silence, watching ghosts become memory, watching memory transform into legacy, watching legacy create future that honored past without being imprisoned by it. Emma's phone buzzed, message from Intelligence Division, new information on potential Wraith sightings, another lead, another hope. She pocketed the phone, smiled. The search would continue, the ghost would be found, and when that day came, Emma would be ready, not broken, not hiding, but whole enough to honor what Wraith represented. Family, partnership, the belief that some bonds transcend loss. The training session continued, dogs and handlers moving through exercises that built trust. Brennan called commands that Titan followed with growing confidence. Garrett learned patience that Nova rewarded with partnership. Lawson discovered gentleness that her assigned dog had been waiting to receive. And Emma watched, guided, remembered. The woman who'd cleaned kennels to escape pain had found purpose in teaching others. The master sergeant who'd thought herself broken had discovered strength in helping broken things heal. The ghost who'd hidden in shadows had learned that light found its way to those willing to wait. As sunset painted Fort Bragg in shades of amber and gold, Emma walked back toward Kennel 17. Titan had graduated. His cage now housed a new arrival, another traumatized dog waiting for someone to understand. She opened the door, stepped inside, made herself small, non-threatening, offered her hand without demanding response. The dog approached, cautious, hopeful, willing to try trust one more time. "I know," Emma whispered. "I know what they did, I know why you're afraid, but I'm asking anyway. One more chance, one more partnership, one more belief that broken things can be made whole. Contact, trust, the beginning of something that might become family." Outside, the last light faded. Stars emerged. And somewhere in the Afghan mountains, a black dog with a lightning bolt scar watched the sky, waiting for the handler who would never stop searching. Never stop believing. Never stop honoring the promise that family means you don't leave anyone behind. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Sometimes strength doesn't announce itself. It quietly endures. Sometimes the most extraordinary people wear the most humble disguises, not because they're weak, but because they understand that true power needs no proclamation, that real courage requires no audience, that the deepest wisdom lives in those who have survived what would break others and chosen to serve anyway. Emma Sophia Holloway cleaned kennels for 3 years, endured mockery, absorbed judgment, carried grief that would have destroyed lesser souls. She could have revealed herself at any moment, silenced critics with a single word, commanded respect through rank and history. Instead, she chose observation, evaluation, the long game that taught lessons no classroom could deliver. Because the greatest warriors understand something civilians never learn. Strength isn't measured by how loudly you proclaim your achievements. It's defined by how quietly you serve when no one is watching, by how you treat those you consider beneath you, by whether you become the person others need rather than demanding they become what you want. The Delta operators learned this truth through humiliation and redemption, through witnessing capability they dismissed, through understanding that the woman they'd mocked held wisdom they desperately needed. But more than that, they learned that respect isn't reward for status. It's reflection of character. It's choice made moment by moment. Decision to honor dignity in everyone, especially those whose disguise makes honor easy to withhold. True strength carries its scars in silence, its medals in memory, its valor in actions that speak louder than any boast. And when you meet someone who embodies these qualities, someone who serves without seeking recognition, someone who endures without demanding acknowledgement, you've encountered something rare. Someone who understands that the greatest power is choosing not to use it when the cost becomes too high. Someone who knows that family means never leaving anyone behind. Someone who proves that broken things, given time and trust, can be made whole again. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.